Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for tuning in for this special event. My name is Matt Parlow, and it's my privilege to serve as the Dean of the Fowler School of Law. I'll get to introductions in a moment, but I wanted to provide a little bit of context for this event. This event is a collaboration between the Wilkinson College and the Fowler School of Law, co-sponsored by the Black Law Student Association. And it's a continuation of a discussion that we at Chapman started this summer in a two-part series calling Turning Anguish to Purpose. And we had two wonderful speakers, one of whom is our featured guest today, Jimmie Gardner, the other being Prexy Nesbitt, the Presidential Fellow at Chapman University, talking about issues of race and some of the social injustices that really came to light this summer that sort of awakened society to some of the inequities in our society. And that conversation spurred even further events. And this event today is part of two different series, the Engaging the World series by the Wilkinson College and the Chapman Dialogues at the Fowler School of Law. And each of these programs focus on issues of diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And today, we are very fortunate to have with us Jimmie Gardner. I'll introduce him in a moment, but thank you, Jimmie, for being here. For those of you who've never been to a Chapman Dialogue, we will start out with about 40 minutes worth of dialogue between Dean Keen and Jimmie Gardner. And then we will open up to the audience for questions. And I encourage audience members all along the way to submit questions through the Q&A function, and I will organize those and then moderate the Q&A from the audience. Dean Keen will lead the Q&A with Jimmie Gardner. So without further ado, let me say a couple of quick thank yous. I want to thank everyone, Mary, Stephanie, Candace, PJ, everyone from both Wilkinson and Fowler who were involved in putting together this event today, and obviously to my colleague, Dean Keen, for all of our collaboration together. I very much appreciate it. Without further ado, let me introduce first the moderator, Dean Jennifer Keen, who is the Dean of the Wilkinson College, and who really is a leader on campus in issues of diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, and it's wonderful to partner with her on so many different areas. The other is our special guest, Jimmie Gardner. Jimmie is one of the most special people I know. He and his wife, Leslie, are good friends. His wife, Judge Leslie Abrams Gardner, was our keynote symposium speaker at the Chapman Law Review Symposium on the 100th anniversary of the women's suffrage movement this past January. And since then, Jimmie has become a very, very, very dear part of the Chapman family. And we'll talk a little bit more about just how deep that Chapman family connection now goes. But Jimmie's story is a compelling one, and I don't want to get too much into it because we want this Q&A to really bring out the injustice that he had to endure for the better part of 3 decades. But Jimmie was wrongfully incarcerated for 27 years, and his story of how he worked tirelessly to gain his freedom and to right that wrong should be an inspiration to all of us and should be a stark reminder to all of us about how our criminal justice system and our society still has racial injustice too deeply rooted in it, and that is something we need to address and correct, both in our studies in undergraduate as law students and as global citizens. So let me turn it over to Dean Keen. Thank you, Jimmie, for being here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you so much, Matt. Jimmie, wonderful to welcome you back to Chapman, although in a weird way, it feels funny to say that because now you're a student here. And this, I think, is something that's just been really wonderful to come out of the conversation and partnership that we were able to develop over the summer. So now you are actually a member of the Chapman family. I also want to thank you for agreeing once again to come and share your story with our students. It's a little different than in June because we have a whole new generation of first-year students, both in the law school and in the undergraduate programs at Chapman and other graduate programs who maybe didn't have a chance to tune into the June event. But I also think that those events, we were very focused on police actions and what was happening at the moment in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and the national outrage over the murder of George Floyd. But some of the things that we didn't really have a chance to delve into, especially when it comes to your story, is the criminal justice system and how that system in many respects is flawed and failing to deliver on the promise of equal justice in American society. So I really appreciate you coming back and helping us delve a little bit more into these important issues. So if you don't mind, we're just going to get to it because we have a long list of questions, and I know you're anxious to get started, as am I. And so I thought we might really start literally at the beginning with maybe you giving us a little bit of insight into how your interactions with police, with the criminal justice system, when they started, in the sense of in your childhood and as a young adult, as a Black boy and Black young adult in American society. What were some of your experiences with the police?
Well, first, I want to thank you, Jennifer, for having me here. And thank you, Matt, also for the great introduction. And I'm just honored to be here for this event in Chapman. Some of my experiences with the police, I'll give you some positives and negatives. In the beginning, I'll start with the positives. I played for the Police Athletic League, football. And we had individuals, policemen that were in our neighborhoods. And this is what makes it so unique and so beautiful versus back then and how we are today. We have policemen in the neighborhoods as community officers. These individuals stayed right there, and they actually gathered young men and women to play sports and have various activities at the Police Athletic League places. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go and play football with the Police Athletic League and get mentoring from these individuals back in like the early 70s. And that was good experience. And I also had some more good experiences with police officers in the neighborhood, the Black police officers. These individuals were more outgoing. These individuals treated us like we were part of their family. So that's a good part. Now I'll go to the negative. I can recall back playing Little League Baseball when one of my friends, Mr. Melvin Hare, he had some mental issues. So his mother called the police to the house to kind of, just calm him down because he was a little irate at the time. So the police came to his home and they actually put him in a chokehold and killed him. And he was 11 years old, and they put him in a chokehold and killed him right in the front yard. And I still can go back to remember those days. And of course the city erupted. There were riots in the city. And that's just one incident, Then I have another incident where going to a funeral of one of my baseball guys. I believe I'm 13, maybe 14, 13 years old. And one of our Little League baseball players got hit in the back of the head with the baseball. So we're attending the funeral. And I go to the store while wearing my baseball uniform. And I'm coming back home from the store, and police officers, they approach me on every level, from the north, south, east, and west, with guns drawn. And I just froze. And they actually were looking for a robbery suspect. And I just, I was frozen at the time, but I asked, was the individual wearing a baseball uniform, and a skinny kid, weighing about 110 pounds? I mean, but that was another incident that really just kind of just traumatized me. And, there were so many other incidents and so many other things that occurred. You had a lot of police brutality. You had individuals getting killed throughout the neighborhoods. And I saw some of that. So it wasn't good. But overall, there wasn't a lot of good things happening from the police department back in the day. Just like individuals are being killed today, they were being killed back in my days also.
That's really something, because I think sometimes we don't realize how systemic, when we talk about systemic racism and systemic problems, what a long history this is and how embedded it is. Where was this? Where did you grow up, Jimmie?
Tampa, Florida.
Tampa, okay.
Yes.
So you mentioned baseball, and of course you were a minor league baseball player. You did have aspirations for a professional career as a baseball player. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like and what you thought the future was going to hold for you?
Sure. And I'll just go back to when I was 10 years old playing in the little leagues. And I told my baseball coach, Coach Zeke, he'd always tell me, "You're the best in the world, Jimmie. See, you're the best in the world." So, and I told him, and I remember at 10 years old, I told him, I said, "Coach, one day I'm going to play for the real Cubs." Because we were the Cubs. We were like Pepsi Cola, the Cubs. And we had the little Cubby bear on the front. And he said, you can do it, yes. And I actually got drafted out of high school in 1984 to the Chicago Cubs organization.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like a dream come true to me. And I was fortunate enough to play 4 seasons in the Chicago Cubs organization, baseball organization. And I played with a lot of Hall of Famers, I gathered a lot of friends. You know, I just had some wonderful times and some wonderful experiences. And when I actually was charged and convicted, you know, all that kind of went away. And I really stopped watching baseball after that. It kind of, well, ain't no count. It traumatized me. You know, I'm fighting for my life and I'm trying to get my life and liberty back. And I just kind of cut off all baseball, basically majority of sports, and just focused in on trying to regain my liberty.
So I know this is a painful part of your story to recount, and we definitely appreciate your willingness to talk about it. Can you walk us through what your experience was of being wrongly charged and convicted?
Yes. It goes back to when I was in Charleston, West Virginia, playing for the minor league baseball team, the Charleston Wheelers. And this was in my 4th season of baseball. And at this time, some white women were sexually assaulted and robbed and beaten. And they gave a description as their attackers as being a light-skinned African man that stood about 6 foot tall. So, you know, I'm a little closer to 6'4" than 6 foot, and I'm pretty dark. You know, my complexion, my hue now is a little lighter, but I'm still a very dark-skinned black man. But anyhow, myself and six guys off the baseball team, along with over 100 black men in the city of Charleston, West Virginia, we were rounded up and taken off the streets, questioned, fingerprinted, photographed, and they were trying to find the culprit. I got questioned, fingerprinted, photographed. I stayed at the police office department for about maybe an hour and a half, hour 40. Nothing matched as it shouldn't have. And I was able to leave. Finished the baseball season, and here we go. Fast forward 2 years. 2 years later, I was confronted by detectives from the Charleston Police Department telling me that my fingerprint now matched from one of the crime scenes from a couple of years earlier. And at that time, I said, if it did, you or someone in the office has done some falsifying of evidence or done something to place my fingerprint there because I didn't do these crimes. So I was asked to give DNA evidence. I gave blood, hair, saliva. I gave all that was asked of me, and I was immediately arrested. And subsequently, I went to trial in January of 1990. And from a 5-day trial, 4.5 days of deliberation, the jury came back with a compromised verdict, I say. And it was not guilty on one case and guilty on the other case. But the fact of the matter is, on one case, the prosecution's theory was that I left the baseball game that I was pitching the night of the crime and went and committed the assaults and came back to the game without being noticed. And that was just ludicrous, but that happened. And subsequently I got convicted of the crime dealing with a fingerprint, and I was sentenced to 110 years. And that's when the horrible nightmare began, 1990. And I tell you, to describe it, I still can hear my mother and my grandmother in the courtroom when the verdict came back just wail out. And then I, instinctively, I yelled back to my mother and grandmother, don't let them see you cry. Just, don't let them see you cry. Keep your head. Don't let them see you cry. That was instinctively, and that was a moment that I'll never forget. But before sentencing, I'll never forget this either. And the judge asked me, would I like to say anything to the court before sentencing? And I'm 22 years old. I'm full of rage at this time. So I just basically told him, yeah, you're wearing the wrong robe. You should have on a white robe, white cap, because that's what you're representing. And he basically said, well, it gives me the pleasure to give you the maximum. He gave me 110 years. And I told him, I said, I'll be back. You haven't seen the last of me. And he didn't let me back into his courtroom. And this took a process of 23 years before I actually got away from his courtroom and went into federal court, which I'll go into later. But the process was arduous. And I had to fight for my life, my liberty. I had to try to stay sane. I had to keep myself in good health, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And it seemed like every door I knocked on, I got rejected. I went through so many innocence projects and a lot of different organizations, but I just couldn't get any help. And it was just a rough ordeal.
So can you tell us a little bit about about prison and just some ideas about, because there are many phases here in terms of challenges and as you say, ordeals that you had to overcome and stay strong through. And clearly your actual need to be in prison and live in prison was one of them as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. When I went into Moundsville, West Virginia Penitentiary. They call it WVP. And it was like going into another world. It was a feeling that is unlike any that I've ever experienced before. And as soon as I got in, I'm in a totally different environment. And it was like 99% white in the prison that I was in. I was in West Virginia. And I'm coming from Tampa, Florida, where there's just a lot of diversity. But in West Virginia, it was like maybe 99% white in prison at the time. Out of probably 1,300 prisoners, it was maybe 70 black prisoners. Mm-hmm. And I was in an institution where it was very, very, very dangerous. I want to highlight that. It was very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And I went in with charges that individuals were harming people over. If you had certain charges, individuals would try to attack you. Mm. So I went in with the charges that I was convicted on, which included sexual assault, robbery, and burglary. And individuals, they didn't like that. Mm. So, and my race, so immediately I was accosted by an Aryan Brotherhood guy. You had different gangs, Aryan Brotherhood, you had KKK, you had skinheads, you had different motorcycle groups, DMI, there were a lot of different groups and organizations. But I protected myself and found myself in a situation where I received a couple of years on punitive segregation. And while on punitive segregation, the officers had actual shotguns. They were shooting. There was a stabbing. If it wasn't every week, it was every other week. I'm believing it was every week. There was a stabbing or somebody getting killed probably every other month or so. Someone got killed. There were a couple of murders while I was there, maybe 3. But it was just such a horrible environment. And I still can hear the shotguns ringing in my ear and hearing the boom. And everybody's just hits the floor. And, and we're in a situation where there's all this steel and the bullets are ricocheting. I'm talking real bullets. So, and this was a wake-up call to me. I knew immediately I was in a fight for my life. And I knew that I had to change my entire makeup and become an individual that was going to survive in that environment. So that environment was very, very rough, very, very, very different. You couldn't get on a schedule over there. You had to be in a position where there was always chaos, always noise, always stabbings, always shootings, and unfortunately, like I said, 2 or 3 individuals were killed, but that was a horrible, horrible time for me. But I just took it to another level by focusing in on making it out of prison and getting in a position to fight for my life and learn a lot of new things.
It is really incredible in that environment that you were able to keep faith over 2.5 decades in the work and the certainty that you would need to possess to exonerate, to build a case for exoneration. Can you explain a little bit about the work you had to do? You had to survive. I think you've definitely outlined that very vividly for us. But now you turned your attention to the work of building a legal case for exoneration. Can you explain a little bit to us what did that entail for you?
Well, I definitely had to learn the law because I realized that my public defender or paid attorneys weren't going to get the job done for me. I went through 13 attorneys. So yes, I learned how to start formulating and learning the law while I was incarcerated, while I was while I was over in lockup. We call it lockup, punitive segregation. Mm-hmm. And I started shepherdizing. And I don't think the individuals today, I know there's no more shepherdizing, but the law students today probably wouldn't know what shepherdizing meant. But I started shepherdizing. I had to really begin to understand how to file certain writs, how to keep myself in position to file in different motions, putting in different petitions. So I learned the law and I had to apply it at the same time as I was learning it. And I had a few individuals giving me pointers, talking to me on this side and telling me, what's best and what's not best. And of course, with me reading and becoming familiar myself. So it was like an arduous process of learning the law and trying to get off into the legal system. And at this time, I had been denied. In West Virginia, you don't have an opportunity for a direct appeal. So I had been denied 3-2 by the court to have a direct appeal. And I actually never received habeas corpus in state court. But to start the process of learning happened on lockup. And it just gave me the opportunity to really hone in and get the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that I needed in order to fight for my life. And I had to just allow nothing or anyone to deter me from my objective and my goals. And I tell you, it's so much that goes on in institutions on a daily basis. People might think, well, they're just in the cell. No, it is like it's so much happening every day, all day, even in the controlled environment, where you have controlled movement. And on lockup, my movement, every time I moved on lockup, I had to move with handcuffs, leg irons, and chains around my waist because we were, of course, in punitive segregation. So that was very, very difficult. And then even trying to type on typewriters, I couldn't. The cuffs, I had to type something like this, and I couldn't separate and go ahead and type the correct way. I had to be able to formulate and peck basically. So it was an arduous process, and I'm so thankful today to be on the other side of that, looking back down that road.
So you really jumped from high school to law school because you finished high school and you just dove right in.
Yes.
And which is an incredible part of your story, and we want to say a little bit more about that. But as you were learning, you were learning the law, and you were learning about ways to make your appeal, but you were also learning about the judicial system and about the criminal justice system. And what were some of the shortcomings that became apparent to you? Because I think a lot of this is informing now your work as an advocate and wanting to share your story, to also spur interest in reform and to kind of uncover some of these intricacies or things in behind closed doors that many people don't ever learn about.
Yes. And, I alluded to it earlier about my direct appeal. In most states, you have an opportunity, a prisoner has an opportunity for a direct appeal. Then a prisoner has a right to a habeas corpus, and then they can proceed on to their highest court, which is their state Supreme Court for review. If they've gotten a negative ruling at the lower level, that's in circuit court where I was in West Virginia. Then we go to Supreme Court and get a ruling. Then you had the opportunity to continue to proceed in the federal court. and seek federal habeas corpus under a 2254 petition. So if that didn't work, of course, you had the opportunity to go to the United States Supreme Court. And going to SCOTUS, the odds are very, very high that you're not going to be heard in SCOTUS. But, my journey consisted of me being in a position to go on a direct appeal, which I didn't get heard. Then I went habeas corpus. And at this time, we had a guy by the name of Fred Zane. And he was a forensic expert, DNA expert in the state of West Virginia. And the West Virginia State Supreme Court had determined that this individual had falsified and testified falsely in 136 cases at that time, including my case. And at this time, we were all supposed to have an opportunity to get review under habeas corpus. Well, I never got that opportunity for a review. And I had 4 orders from the West Virginia State Supreme Court directing the lower court to give me hearings. In fact, full evidentiary hearings on my case. And I never received one hearing by the judge. Because if you can recall what I told him when I got sentenced. So I guess he held on to that and didn't deal with me. That's why I speak and tell people today, do not exacerbate a situation by showing that you don't have emotional intelligence. When in your most difficult situation, remain calm. Don't make it worse, like I did. But anyhow, I didn't get the opportunity to get a review in state court for 23 years. And I'll tell you, I filed 6 habeas corpuses on my own. I went through 13 attorneys that were appointed on my case to get me habeas corpus relief. Not one of these attorneys filed a habeas corpus on my behalf. Not one. And the judge wouldn't entertain any of the 6 habeas corpuses that I filed. And those included amended habeas and such. But, I tell the story because I just had to keep going and keep fighting. And I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't give up. And every attorney I had, I tell them, I said, look, I got full evidentiary orders. I have an order here saying for the court to give me a hearing. And the attorneys would say, that order doesn't mean anything. And I'd have to argue with them about the process and trying to get into the courts. And it was just a bad situation. But I'll go back to this Zane guy. This guy actually falsified my legal documents. Instead of excluding me as the suspect, he included me as the suspect. And I didn't find out about it until 4 years after my trial. And then I had these documents, I received them through discovery. Mm-hmm. They looked nothing like what was presented at trial. And they actually excluded me because I learned how to read DNA reports and forensic reports also. And I realized, I said, this is a total exclusion. But every attorney was like, well, you're just saying that. You don't have, I said, look, I'm reading and understanding. I'm reading different DNA. I'm reading DNA stuff. I'm reading up on forensic science from the FBI. I'm reading all this stuff. And I said, I can comprehend. And I just could get no one to listen to me and no one to present my position. And that took a process of 23 years, like I was saying, before I had my review. I just took a leap of faith and went into the federal court. I filed and went into the federal court. And a guy by the name of Cornell Day told me, he said, man, just put one of your petitions from state court in as an exhibit when you're going, because I'm trying to change the law in state court, knowing that I don't have an opportunity to go up there. I shouldn't be going in the federal court because I haven't exhausted. And you have to exhaust. But I didn't exhaust. So I went in under an egregious inordinate delay. And I tried to change the laws wherein a petitioner, and I asked the court, every similarly situated prisoner in the United States of America has had an opportunity for a habeas corpus review. And here I am at 23 years. I have not had the first opportunity to be heard. I haven't had my Brady issues heard. I haven't had an ineffective assistance counsel issue heard. So this is egregious. But of course, the federal court denied that. But the court said, however, you added a petition in that shows that you should be able to come in federal court and seek relief. So bring everything in federal court. I showed him a prima facie. He said, bring everything in federal court. So at that time in 2013, November, I brought everything into federal court. And I amended my 2254 and I filed for attorneys, investigator and such. And that's when the process began in federal court.
And is this what led to the breakthrough then? What is the breakthrough in your case?
That the breakthrough was me getting into federal court.
Okay.
The judge brought me in, and even though I had been denied 23 years of due process, I still had to have evidence to show my innocence and prove my innocence. And the level of proof was even higher at the federal court level than the state court level. I don't know if individuals are aware of that, but it's even a more difficult process to show that you have had constitutional violations that have been egregiously walked upon, and you have to prove that point. So while in federal court, I'm in there. It took me 46 months total. 46 months I stayed in federal court, but by the grace of God, I was capable of getting in there and getting a DNA expert from the Ohio State University to come in and testify on behalf of the DNA evidence in my case. And that's what got me over the hurdle. Approximately a few days later, the state of West Virginia dismissed all charges in my case. But the DNA expert came in and testified at a pretrial hearing, because after I got out, they're going to retry me. And I went 5 months on getting ready for a retrial. But this DNA expert we brought him in during pretrial, which is kind of unheard of. And in my mind, we weren't going to have another trial. So I said, bring him in pretrial. So that's what we did. He testified, and that was the break. And all charges dismissed with prejudice after the testimony of this well-known 30-something year expert of DNA.
So I was going to ask you, because I think one of the things about your story, because you have been exonerated, you are freed, that there can be an interpretation that the system does work, that eventually justice did prevail. But then listening to you, clearly what you did was extraordinary and exceptional. This is not something that everybody can do. And so maybe you could speak about this, about other prisoners that you met who were in similar situations, who don't have these kinds of endings to their stories. What are the obstacles to even beginning with the kind of process that you were successful in?
Well, I met a lot of men in prison, and most of those men, they were educationally, from an education standpoint, they were illiterate. They had the majority had 3rd, 4th grade education levels, and to compound that, they had economic barriers that didn't allow them to receive good attorneys, place them in positions where they would just push through the court system and push through the legal process. They just didn't have the same support that I had. And the most important thing that I want individuals to know, I had support from my family. My family was there for me. My family helped attain attorneys. My family helped me with legal bills. And I tell you, legal bills with me, maybe a couple $100,000, easy. And that's while I was inside. But most guys in prison don't have that. Most prisoners don't have family. They don't stick around. I stayed in for almost 3 decades, and my family stayed with me every step of the way. Every step of the way. And I'm so blessed and so fortunate. That's why I understand, most guys inside, it's such an arduous fight getting to the law library, being able to try to, once you get to the law library, having time to even begin to read and try to find out about the law. And then when I went in, we only had typewriters. And then we had something like a word processor. And most students at Chapman, they probably never heard of a word processor. We had typewriters.
Typewriter.
Yeah, typewriters. And when the ribbon ran out, imagine having yourself in a position when the ribbon runs out. Next thing you know, you got to wait for the officer to find a replaceable ribbon. Next thing you know, the whiteout has went out. You got to replace the whiteout. Then we didn't get to keep our information at where we were at. You had to start all over. once you left the library that day, you come back the next day, you got to start all over. If you get a computer. So there were so many hurdles. And when we went to the other things, we went to the what was it called? We went to the not the computers, but it's so outdated. I can't even think of the name of them right now. Well, anyhow, we had discs along with these instruments.
Oh, the floppy disk drives?
We had the floppies. Yeah. We couldn't keep the
definitely
floppies.
Don't know that. Yeah.
Yes, we couldn't keep the floppies in our room, so we had to leave those at the law library. We couldn't keep our places. If you're filing a petition, you might be on page 20 something, and you got to just stop and break it off and go on about your business and find that spot the next day. So it was an arduous process, and I went through that, and individuals. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of humility, and it takes more than you. It takes people, reaching out, helping you, family members helping. It's just a lot of things have to come together for you to be in a position to get to the point that I am. And most guys don't get to this position. And most guys, I worked on a lot of cases inside, and I watched a lot of men die, over 200 while inside. And I worked on cases that I understood these individuals had great grounds, but they were barred. AEDPA, Anti-Terrorist Effective Death Penalty Act. Oh my. The worst thing that happened, it hamstrung prisoners throughout the country. If you go 366 days, you are 1 day over that 1 year mark, and you are barred from presenting your issues to a higher court. You're done. So many individuals had evidence of innocence and didn't get the opportunity to present it to the courts. And there's still people languishing in prison today that are barred under the AEDPA. They just can't get back in the door. And it's a sad situation. It's sad.
What is that? Can you explain that this a little bit?
The Anti-Terrorist Effective Death Penalty Act is an act that was signed into law in 1996 by President Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. That was after the Oklahoma City bombing occurred. Right. And this law gives litigants, it gives prisoners a period of 1 year, 365 days to have their cases litigated. And that's from the entire process. It starts at habeas corpus. It doesn't start at direct appeal. It starts at habeas corpus. So after that direct appeal decision is over, bang, your clock begins. And from that position, you have 365 days. So you want to put in a notice of intent to appeal and to stop the clock. Once you stop the clock, you can be in litigation for years, but the clock has been stopped. But once you get a ruling, the clock starts again. Mm-hmm. And by the time you're in a position to get the next ruling, you have to have your habeas corpus together and be in a position to file it in the court. So it's like the purpose of it was to make the courts more efficient, supposedly. Yeah, I'm thinking more efficient. And that was just, the courts were already efficient. But the purpose of the Anti-Terrorist Effective Death Penalty Act was to make it more efficient. But it actually hamstrung prisoners by kicking them out after that 365 days, because most prisoners don't know the law. Then most attorneys allowed their clients time to roll over. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't tell them about the Anti-Terrorist Effective Death Penalty Act. So guys don't know, but they're still held liable. And that was just, that was so heartbreaking, watching all these individuals not have an opportunity to present their cases to the court after that 365 days. And, I just want us as a country to abolish that AEDPA and give individuals opportunities and rights to get back in court. It's men right now that might have DNA evidence that excludes them, but they're barred. They don't have an opportunity to get back in court. So now it's not about innocence or guilt anymore. It's about the process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we as a country can do better and try to make corrections where we've done wrong in the judicial process, and not at the stake of individuals languishing in prison. let's cut this short, get individuals out of it. I don't want to see people do 27 years like I did before they have an opportunity for their first review.
So you were successful in overcoming all of this. And I think that in telling us your story, you're pointing out to us so many points along the way where the system failed and where reform and changes need to be made. But when we think about you and this moment where you suddenly realize that you have prevailed, that you have, in a sense, beaten the system, how did that feel?
I don't want to say I beat. I don't want to say I beat the system. I gained relief in an unjust system, and that's very, very rewarding. But yeah, I didn't beat it. In fact, I had my life taken from me. And through this system, I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, if I just talked about some of the nights that I cried and prayed and cried and prayed, I mean, oh man, it's just it's an atrocity, and I'm not the only guy. And I still can recall going into that West Virginia system and hearing white guys, telling me, "Man, I've been down 15 years and I haven't had an opportunity for habeas corpus yet." And I'm like, it's not what I read. My readings of habeas corpus, and my understanding of the law is it's a process. You have to get it in. You have to be able to get this in and be heard in a very, I guess, reasonable time, not 15 years. And next thing you know, I'm in this system and I'm seeing this by the hundreds of cases, and the system of West Virginia, it's just a very slow and tedious process, but placing myself in the position to go through what I went through and come home, I'm thankful, but by no stretch of the imagination, I didn't beat the system. I actually received the relief requested after 27 years. And I was able to be one of the few fortunate to make it home healthy, mentally, physically, and spiritually. As I stated earlier, I've seen hundreds, I'm talking hundreds of men around me die, leave the basketball court one day, dead the next. Young men hanging themselves in the shower, young men hanging themselves in the middle of the pod. I've seen so many horrible incidents. People can't take it. Individuals in prison saying, I'm innocent, but they can't overcome the obstacles, the hurdles. So I'm just so blessed and thankful to have gotten the review and had a judge, a federal judge, district court judge, hear my case out of so many thousands of cases and be able to get the relief and prove my innocence.
When did you receive the news that you were going to be released, and how did you feel at that moment?
Well, I tell you, and I just alluded to it. I had been waiting 46 months in federal court on top of 23 years in state court. And my routine was go to the weight pal, go eat, and then go back to your pod. On a one day, I can recall this one day, about a week before things changed drastically. I went to the weight pal and I was getting ready to head to the dining room to eat, and a butterfly landed on my left hand, and this butterfly stayed on my hand for almost like 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. And I walked around the compound, and the butterfly wasn't flustering; it was just calm. And it just landed on me and stayed on my hand. So I didn't work out. I didn't go eat. I walked around the compound with this butterfly for 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. And I stood on the sidewalk talking with guys, and I had a whole crowd of guys around me. I'll never forget it. And after the butterfly, I guess, relaxed and I guess gave me the message that I needed, it gently flew away. And it flew directly over the barbed wire fence that was approximately 30, 40 yards away. And it flew over the barbed wire fence, and I started crying. Unconsciously, I'm crying because I knew that was my sign that my time was up. And that was me. That butterfly was me leaving the institution. That was like on a Wednesday. So on Sunday, I couldn't wait to call my mom. I call her on weekends. On Sunday, I called my mother. And before I can tell her about the butterfly, she was so happy. She said, "Baby, I went in the closet and prayed, and Jesus told me, you coming home. So go ahead and pack up all your clothes, pack up everything, because you're coming home. That was on a Sunday. And that Friday, that same week, that Friday, I got the call, March 25th, 2016. I got the call from my attorney that morning, 9:15 that morning. And he said, are you standing or are you sitting? I said, I'm standing. He said, you might want to sit down. I said, no, go ahead. Tell me what it is. He said, well, today your conviction was overturned and your sentences were vacated. He said, how you feel? I said, I feel good. He said, you don't sound like it. He said, you're not overjoyed, elated? I said, I already knew. I already knew what you're telling me, because I believe in the signs that I believe God sent my way. When that butterfly flew over that fence and I'm crying unconsciously, that sign was for me. When my mom told me what she told me, I knew it was over. So that's when I received that March 25th, 2016. So it was a very happy day. And 1 week from that, the next Friday, April 1st, 2016, I went into the courtroom and the state of West Virginia said they were going to retry me on all the charges with the same evidence. And it was a little bittersweet, but I got to go home to my family and I wasn't worried at all, because I knew God had already showed me that I'm coming home and this is over. So I went home April 1st, 1 week later, 2016.
Wow. That's such an amazing story. Is that a butterfly pin I see on your lapel?
Oh yes, the butterfly is my symbol. You know, my organization, J.C. Gardner Speaks LLC.
Yeah.
And I proudly represent the butterfly today, because it is so close to me. And I've had another butterfly land on my hand at my sister's home in Maryland. And I guess you can call me the butterfly whisperer, but butterflies and myself, we're pretty cool.
I don't think we're ever going to look at butterflies again and not think of you. We're quickly running out of time, which we don't want to do without giving some audience members a chance to ask questions. And we had quite a lot of questions coming in as you've been recounting to us your experiences. So maybe Matt, if you would like to maybe share with us some of the questions from the audience, that would give Jimmie a chance to answer at least a few before our conversation's finished.
Sure. There's so many great ones. With where we are in the conversation, let me throw this one out first. What are your views on rehabilitation, and what should the goals of incarceration be, particularly not only from your experience being in prison, but your experience having been there wrongfully convicted and wrongfully incarcerated?
Oh, that's a great question, Matt. Rehabilitation is always something that I'm an advocate for. You know, however, our prison system today is more shaped on punishment. And I think we need to get away from the punishment and trying to punish and keep individuals incarcerated for centuries and many decades, and work on dealing with the I guess the mental side of it. You know, what caused these individuals to commit crimes, you know, and try to get them the needed help that they need and so deserve. So I'm more into reform and, you know, giving individuals opportunity for higher learning, giving individuals opportunity to get assessed and get good psychological treatment. And I believe in that.
This is an appropriate question. Did anything happen to Zane after all the bad things he did?
Zane was indicted on my case in 1998. That's case number 98F106 out of Charleston, West Virginia. And it was deliberating, September 11, 2001. And such frenzy, you know, we all know what happened September 11, 2001, tragedy. So the jury had a mistrial, and before the state could try Mr. Zane, he died in the beginning of 2002, the year 2002. And I never got an opportunity to confront him or get any relief in state court.
There are a couple questions about, you know, have the governments that put you away, have they compensated you? Have they done right by you? And so maybe you could talk a little bit briefly about, you know, the fact your lawsuits against West Virginia.
Yeah, to date, the state of West Virginia has not compensated me. And I've been almost 3 years on my civil litigation, that's state and federal civil litigation. And the state of West Virginia they just don't want to compensate me and admit their wrongs. But I'm fighting arduously. I have attorneys out of Washington, Reed Smith Law Firm out of Washington and Chicago, and I have also my other firm, Robert Dunlap Associate in Beckley, West Virginia. And right now I have a December trial date that's set in federal court. And the state court, I have a trial date for next year, 2021, I'm sorry. But yeah, we're still fighting. I just ask that all keep me in prayer. And I'm going to continue to battle to try to be made whole again. And I have a good team around me, especially A. Scott Bolden and Monica, Rob, and Scott.
Right. There have been several people weighing in with how compelling a story you have and what an inspiration you are, and with prayers. One question that came in, I think, with what you just said, how did you keep your faith in yourself and in God during 27 years of being in prison when you knew you shouldn't be there?
I tell you, that's a wonderful question because, I encourage everyone in their faith to please, continue to be as divine and just loyal and righteous and good in your faith as you can be. I believe in God and I kept all my faith in my higher power, and I continue to try to live my life accordingly while inside. And I didn't involve myself with activities that would cause me harm. I placed myself in good situations. If I wasn't in the education department, I was in the room praying, or either I was in the law library working on my case, or I was on the weight pile trying to get right. But I always kept myself in good positions, doing the right thing, so I can receive the justice that I was seeking. But it's just a wonderful opportunity to be able to be here and speak about my higher power today. And I try to live my life in accordance, and I believe all the good that you do, you receive in return, and vice versa. So I've placed myself in a position to do all the good I can do, and I've just been blessed so abundantly, and I'm so thankful. But I give that praise to God.
Been several questions that have come in that ask about, what kind of reforms could we have for the wrongfully incarcerated? What kind of reforms in the criminal justice system, in legal resources, programs to try to help people, particularly, as you pointed out, many who are incarcerated that do not have the ability to pay for, effective legal counsel?
Yes, that's a great question. Specifically with wrongfully convicted men and women, we come home and we don't have the same resources provided like regular prisoners coming home that were guilty of their crimes. With exonerees, it's like we just were away for 10, 20 years on the street or whatever, doing nothing, gaining nothing, not putting any money into the Social Security, doing nothing. So we don't have health care. We don't have housing. It's so difficult getting health care, housing, food, shelter, everything. It's another level. I tell you, when I first came home, I'm just so thankful for family, because I couldn't get health care. I couldn't get any type of housing. In order to get housing, they wanted extra payment, because it's like, well, you got to put up at least double of what this costs. But it's so hard. But what I think we should do is, as people, we should have funding set aside for wrongfully convicted people, so when they come out of prison, they can have the opportunity to get money for housing, clothes, food, to be in the position to be helped immediately, not having to wait through a process of 3-4 years of litigation. And the Innocence Projects, the Innocence Projects do the work that's so wonderful. I'm with the Georgia Innocence Project. I'm on the board of the Georgia Innocence Project. And the work that they do here and all throughout the United States, every Innocence Project, it is wonderful. Individuals can, I recommend individuals to be a part of these Innocence Projects. You can volunteer your time and service. You can volunteer your money. Do something to set up something for individuals coming home, so you can put them in a position so they can try to live as a productive and healthy life as possible.
great. We just had two questions that just came in. There's still others we'll hopefully get to, but there's sort of a lot of questions around what can undergraduate students, law students, lawyers who are listening in, what can we all do to help try to right the kind of wrongs that you had and try to help support the wrongfully convicted?
I would just say, just be as involved as you can. Like I said, there are organizations already out here that are fighting for justice and for liberty for individuals. So you can just offer your time, offer your monies. If it's $5 or $10, it helps. That $5 or $10 can mean a difference to someone in the legal process, trying to get a certain bill paid, trying to get things done on their case. So it means a lot. And I just say, I'm at Chapman University because I love what Chapman University represents. And it gives me the pleasure to be able to talk and share with so many wonderful young men and women out here, because you all are the future. I'm almost 55, and you all are the future. So everything I have, I share with you because I know you'll be running this country and you'll be in positions of authority over individuals. And I want you to show empathy. I want you to understand that people need to have good people in positions of authority so we can keep this country as peaceful and as wonderful as we can. We want to restore the democracy and let this place be understood as a good place. And you all are the future to do that. So remember, when you're taking classes and you're putting yourselves in positions to be in higher employment levels and go to different levels of occupation, you are going to make it. And when you make it, you're going to be equipped because you're going to have stories like mine to fall back on. And remember, there's a lot of Jimmie Gardners out there, but not under your watch.
I think that's such an inspiring message, Jimmie. I have to just say, I really appreciate you sharing that with our students, because part of the dialogue series in the law school and certainly in Wilkinson College, Engaging the World, Leading the Conversation, is the idea that having conversation and dialogue is in fact the first step towards making real change in our society. And I think we're at a moment where sometimes it's frustrating about that. People say, well, we're just talking. What does that mean? But we have to understand, we have to grow our minds and shift perspectives. And you've opened up, I think, a world to all of us that many of us have not personally experienced or don't know people in these situations. And this is happening in our country behind prison doors, in courtrooms across the country. And so I think that it's extremely inspiring and so generous of you to take the time to share what is a difficult experience with us. And I think that we look forward to the next few years of building our relationship. You're ours now. You're a student. You're going to be an alum. You are Chapman University now, and we are so, go Panthers. That's right. Pause up. We are so blessed to have you as part of our community.
I'm honored to be here, and I thank you for having me. And I just pray that I've been able to inspire and motivate our young men and women to continue doing the things that they're doing in a positive way and to give back. I stress, give back. Always give back. Thank you.
Jimmie, thank you so much for sharing your story, for really helping open all of our eyes to some of the experiences that you should have never had to go through, and that give us inspiration for how we can continue to bring about a more just society and work on issues of racial justice, of criminal justice, really the kind of reform we need in society. I want to remind everyone who is watching and listening, we weren't able to get to all the questions, unfortunately, but there will be a podcast that Jimmie is doing later today as part of the Wilkinson Engaging the World series and partnership. And so we will get to some of those questions in that. Thank you to Dean Keene for leading the conversation. Jimmie, thank you for everything that you do to try to raise awareness about these issues, for being an inspiration to all of us, and for taking time to be here today. I know we'll share the Q&As with you, but there were tons of people who wrote in saying, I don't have a question, I just appreciate him sharing, and he's such an inspiration, and people are praying for you and thanking you for everything you did.
Thank you, Jennifer, for having me. Thank you, Matt. Thank you to all the students that chimed in and those who are listening and viewing this all over. And I just say, I'm blessed and I'm so thankful. Continue to give others what you have. I stress that.
Thank you again. It's a great way for us to end a really wonderful program. Thanks for being here, Jimmie.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.